In September of 1985, an experienced outdoorsman heads from his home in California to Glacier Bay National Park, Alaska, to unplug for 2 weeks. He was solo and looking forward to enjoying some time alone in the Alaskan wilderness. But when rangers find his campsite and he's missing, there are more questions than answers. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Elise, and I'm your host. And last week, I believe I said, I was going to be backpacking in the high Uintas. Unfortunately, that trip did not work out. My hiking partner got injured, and so we were not able to do that. And it's not a hike that I really want to do myself. So instead, I did just a little overnighter out in Lone Peak Wilderness, and it was beautiful. So I did a little bit of backpacking, just not the trip that I had originally planned. And that's one thing I love about living in Utah is that it's easy to pivot and there are so many outdoor recreation opportunities. I actually think I'm going on another backpacking trip next week. Well, technically this week. And so that's exciting. So I hope that you guys are all also getting out and enjoying the summertime. It just turned monsoon season here in Utah, so it kind of makes it tricky. I've hiked and camped in the rain. I don't wanna be caught in a severe thunderstorm in the Uintas because it's so high in elevation, but, I guess what happens, will happen. So I think I might do another solo backpacking trip, this week. So let's dive into our case today. We are going to a national park where I've never been, and it's Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. My neighbor went, she said it was amazing, but, I've never been and I hope to go one day. Now, this is a pretty remote national park. It's located in Southeast Alaska, which is, west of Juneau. So, President Calvin Coolidge proclaimed the area around Glacier Bay a national monument in 1925, and since then it has gained the national park status. Now, it's over 3.2 million acres. It was established later as a national park on December 2nd, 1980, and it's not heavily visited. It only gets around 500,000 visitors per year. So it is very remote. A lot of people don't go there because it's in Alaska, so it's far to travel from the US. And I say from the US, Alaska is a US state, but from the mainland. And it's also remote, you have to fly into it, and personally, I hate flying, so it's a big reason why I haven't done a lot of travel in Alaska yet, but I hope to in the future. So, Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve occupies the northernmost section of the southeastern Alaska coastline between the Gulf of Alaska and Canada. The Canada US border approaches to within 15 miles or 24 kilometers of the ocean in the St. Elias Mountains at Mount Fairweather, the park's tallest peak at 15,300 feet or 4,700 meters. So, lots of coastline and lots of mountains. So, like I said earlier, it's remote. There are no roads that lead to the park, and it's most easily reached by air or sea travel. So, it's again a place where a lot of people would not go or could not go. Despite the lack of roads, the park receives an average about 443,975 recreational visitors annually from 2012 to 2021, and there were only 89,000 visitors in 2021. So, again, very remote, very um, not populated. If you want solitude, you would choose Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. Most of the visitors arrive via cruise ships, which is pretty cool. But the number of ships that arrive each day is limited by regulation. So even though people are cruising in to see this national park, it's still really not popular because that even is regulated and for good reason. Let's talk about the wildlife. Now, when I said that there are a lot of mountains and there's a lot of coastline, there are a lot of animals. The wildlife in Glacier Bay includes both brown and black bear species, gray wolves, coyotes, moose, red foxes, porcupine, marmots, beavers, two species of otter, wolverine, mountain goats, and minks. And of course, there are a lot of smaller animals like mice and things like that. Birds that nest in this park include the bald eagle, golden eagle, five species of woodpecker, two species of hummingbird, raven, four species of falcon, six species of hawk, osprey, 10 species of owl, and there's a lot of marine life, which include sea otters, harbor seals, sea lions, porpoises, orca, whales, and lots of other fish. So, about 80% of the visitors that attend or go to Glacier Bay, attend is not really the right word, they arrive on cruise ships, like I've said. And that's how my neighbor actually visited Glacier Bay National Park, was on a cruise ship, I think last year. And so, that's a really good way to visit this national park if you want to just see it and do a little bit, but if you want true solitude, it's best to fly in, and, that's pretty much what, this person we're gonna be talking about today was doing. Now, if you're thinking like it's so remote, there's no accommodations. There are in-park accommodations at the Glacier Bay Lodge. The park and preserve hosts many outdoor activities such as hiking, camping, mountaineering, kayaking, rafting, fishing, and bird watching. And unlike many other national parks in Alaska, subsistence hunting is not allowed in the park, only in the preserve. So there is hunting, just not in the park boundaries. So the park also maintains limited trails near Bartlett Cove, including the Forest Loop Trail, which is 1 mile, and the Bartlett River Trail, which is 4 miles round trip. There is another trail called the Beach Trail, and it extends 6 miles along the coastline. Beyond these trails, backcountry hiking is available for experienced wilderness travelers, but it's not very popular with the cruise ship guests, as you can assume. Hikers should be prepared for wet conditions and carry bear spray due to the common presence of brown bears. So, today we're going to be talking about a man named Kevin Robert O'Keefe. Now, Kevin was an avid outdoorsman. He was totally enthralled by the wonders of nature, and he was very competent in the wilderness. And so, in late September 1985, it wasn't a surprise to his wife or family that he wanted to go spend a couple of weeks out in the Alaskan wilderness. Now, Kevin was 36 at the time, and he went alone to the isolated Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska for a series of wilderness hikes along with camping. Kevin was originally from Sacramento, California, and to prepare for his trip, Kevin took several survival classes and brought enough equipment and supplies for a month. So he was well prepared. He was only planning to be out there for 2 weeks, and he brought enough supplies for a month. So, yeah, Kevin was going to fly to Alaska and spend 2 weeks there, unplug from his life, enjoy hikes, enjoy the Alaska wilderness, and he was planning to meet his wife at the same airport that he left from. Now, when he got to Glacier Bay, he did notify the park rangers what he would be doing and for how long, and nobody was worried about his safety or anything like that. He was very thorough in planning this trip, and he did everything for safety that he should have. So he arrived in Juneau, Alaska on September 20th, and 2 days later, he took a float plane to the Muir Inlet, which is north of Wolf Point, and established a base camp up there. But the closest area was Wolf Point. So he wanted to just get away from technology and be among nature. And so it wasn't odd to Kevin's wife when he didn't text or call during the 2 weeks that he was there. That was the whole purpose of him going outside and doing this trip, was to get away and not really be connected with anyone and just to connect with nature itself. And so his wife wasn't freaked out that he didn't text or call her while he was there. Now, personally, even when I just go hiking, and specifically if I'm going solo backpacking, I have a Garmin and I do send my husband text updates, like when I'm hitting the trail, when I've made it to my destination, and then when I'm headed out. Just for safety purposes, because when you do things like this alone, you kind of need to take extra safety precautions. And one of those usually is to have constant contact or someone tracking your location as you go. But as we know, back in the 80s, this technology really wasn't available at this time. And so Kevin, he wasn't telling his wife, hey, I'm going to call you every single day. So it wasn't weird that he wasn't doing that because that was kind of the agreement or the understanding that they had. So a week passed, and 2 days before Kevin planned on leaving, a few park rangers were patrolling Wolf's Point, which is where Kevin told them that he was staying, right, in his little campsite. The park rangers decide, hey, while we're here, we might as well check on Kevin. Now, again, previously they only knew that he was there because he told them, hey, this is what I'm doing for safety purposes. This is how long I'll be staying. This is what I'm doing. And so they just thought, we're out there. Let's just go check up on him. The trip to Wolf's Point wasn't to check on Kevin. It was just like a let's kill two birds with one stone, right? So on October 8th, 1985, National Park Ranger David Nemeth and his partner spotted Kevin's tent near the high tide line, as well as various bits of debris. So they decided to investigate it further. Now, they thought Kevin was just on a day hike or went to go get some wood. They were a little concerned, but they knew that Kevin was competent in the wilderness, and so they were just thinking, "He just left all of his stuff here, and he's on a day hike." So, it's really interesting because all of his gear and supplies were strewn about. The tent was shut. They open the tent up and find Kevin's hiking bag with equipment, with food and water inside, and, they thought it was weird, but they rationalized the scene, assuming that Kevin went to get wood to build a fire and maybe to go on a hike. Like I said, he was competent. So the Rangers aren't necessarily worrying at this time. They decided to come back the next day to see how Kevin was doing, right? They just thought, oh, we missed him. He's just not here right now. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll check on Kevin. So they left. And then the next day they came back. And unfortunately, that's when they knew that something was wrong because the same gear was in the same position. The tent was in the same spot and condition, and nothing had changed from overnight. And so they knew that they needed to be concerned at this point because Kevin was likely missing or hurt or somewhere, and he didn't come back to his camp that night. Now, at this time, both rangers believed that, oh crap, we gotta do a search, right? So about 100 park rangers with dogs searched not only Wolf's Point, but Glacier Bay, and they didn't find any signs of Kevin anywhere. Investigators searched Kevin's campsite and noticed how everything he'd need to survive below freezing temperatures, like coats, food, and water, was all there at the campsite, meaning that Kevin didn't take any of these things on a day hike or on an excursion. The search continued for 2 more weeks, but there was no success. They didn't find any signs of Kevin, and unfortunately, they were forced to call off the search. During this time, of course, park rangers, they contacted Kevin's relatives. Now, his relatives, i.e., his wife, they confirmed that he would be making short hikes and would not be making overnight trips. So they knew that searching was the right thing to do because there's no way that he set up his base camp and then went somewhere to overnight camp. He was only doing day hikes. And so that's kind of what set rangers off of like, okay, we got to start searching. He wasn't planning on overnight camps. And like I said, all of his gear was there. Food, his sleeping bag, backpack, tent, everything was there. He didn't take anything with him. Now, what's interesting about this is that there was a pair of boots, a glove liner, and a hat that were discovered several hundred yards from the campsite in a gully out of sight from the camp. Not having these items would be potentially deadly in Alaska at this time of year. So they found some of his stuff kinda scattered away, but it wasn't like a bear or an animal had come through his site and scattered stuff. Rangers reported no bear tracks or signs of an animal attack. There was no blood, no fur, nothing was damaged. Um, it was just really, really odd. It was a very interesting scene. His boots were found, it was just really weird. I can't This is probably one of the most bizarre cases that I'll cover on Morbid Outdoors because this is an extremely competent person who was set up for a month, and it was just like he bam, disappeared into thin air with none of his gear. Most oftentimes, people disappear while they're hiking, and to that, we can easily say, oh, they got lost, they had a medical event, they fell, something. But in Kevin's case, I don't even know if we can confidently say any of that because he left everything there. So, after having not found any signs of Kevin anywhere, with 100 park rangers and dogs, and people searching for 2 weeks, it was literally as if Kevin had vanished off of the face of the earth. And to this day, no sign of Kevin has ever been found. And I'm going to remind you guys, this was 41 years ago, and nothing of Kevin's has ever been found. All of the investigators and park rangers were utterly perplexed at the situation, and they really weren't able to hypothesize anything. The creepiest part, however, is the fact that at the site, there was a copious amount of food out in the open, and no animals touched it. In fact, there wasn't any sign of life anywhere near the campsite, which means the animals, for whatever reason, were avoiding Kevin's campsite. Now, we're talking Alaskan wilderness. We're talking there's like very few established trails. He is literally out in the wilderness, and there was food there, and no animals have gotten into it or messed with it. That is the most bizarre fact of this entire case is that the animals weren't doing what animals do. They were not taking part in that the thing that makes an animals, they're scavenging. They're going to find food no matter whose it is or what it is. They're going to find it. Especially it's the crazy thing is that no bears came up and ate any of Kevin's food. So that is the craziest thing. And honestly, like, at this point, I have listened to this case on a few other podcasts, and I think to me, it's gotta be something supernatural or paranormal because I don't think we can rationalize why no animals were touching his food. Because even if it had only been that one night, animals would have found the food. If you've ever camped in the wilderness or backpacked, you hear animals outside of your tent all night when you're in it, right? So if Kevin wasn't in his tent that one single night, animals still would have been around. But for some reason, they were not near Kevin's campsite. So, from his site, they did recover a hat, gloves, and his day pack. Listed as part of the accessories that was not recovered was his camera equipment, his clothing. So, he had warm clothing because it was, late September, early October. And it seemed like he might have been snowshoeing to the lake to take photos because they recovered his hiking boots, but not snowshoes and his camera equipment. So that was the one theory, like maybe he snowshoed somewhere to take photos. However, I'm just curious as to why they did not find Kevin. I also don't think the theory of him going for a swim and getting taken out is a good theory because I don't think a sane person would have entered that water with camera equipment or snowshoes and drowned. That's just not something that I'm willing to believe. So that is the case of Kevin O'Keefe. It is bizarre, it is old, and it is crazy that he just vanished. And the craziest thing to me, like I said, is none of the animals messing with his campsite or his food. It's really, really weird. Kevin's case is truly one of mystery. All of his gear was left behind, and the food was untouched by animals. It literally sounds like Kevin vanished up into thin air. And for Kevin's case, I don't even know if I could give a good theory myself of like, here's like Occam's razor. Here's what I think happened because I really don't know. And at this point, I kind of did something supernatural happen? Like, that's where I'm at. That sounds crazy. And I know that's probably not the case, but if you look at the details of this case, and there's not a ton of details online because it is an older case, I just think it's just really bizarre and you can't really find a lot about it online. So I tried and this was the extent of what I found. Kevin still has not been found. His remains have not been found. No camera equipment, no snowshoes. Literally all of these rangers and investigators and dogs searched for weeks the surrounding area and beyond, and Kevin has never been located. As always, recreate responsibly and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. And please leave me a comment. I want to know what you think happened to Kevin because sometimes I read these cases and I'm like, I have my own opinions, and other people look at things differently. So, what do you think happened to Kevin? And have you ever heard of this case before? Like I said, there's not a lot online, but I really want to know. Comment. I want to know what you think happened to Kevin because I'm at a loss. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. You can also join us on Patreon for early and ad free content. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.